Welcome to the Let Me Take a Selfie podcast, where we talk about how you can get the most out of your life through your self-care and well-being. And now for your host, Ben Rashley.
What's up, guys? So on today's episode, I've got a guest here who pretty much has evolved his whole ethos of business and personal life around pretty much two words, which is choose kind. There is pretty much the community that he has sort of built over in WA has really sort of grown to, from what I can see from here in Melbourne, into this sort of really valuable and loving community where it's sort of, you know, everything just sort of, it's probably not the best sort of words, but it's sort of like everything gives back to itself. So, you know, it's always paying forward and it's always moving around and it sort of enriches this whole community. And this community itself is a very sort of rich, happy community. And this is pretty much how they run their business in their life over there. And he is the co-owner and coach at Athlete X in Bibra Lakes, Western Australia. And that's Mel O'neil-King. Welcome to the show, Mel.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Perth, so good to have me on board. So thank you.
Absolutely. And we've actually got some sun out. So I would say you're making me jealous, but we've got some sun out today. So I'm happy where I am too.
Good to hear.
Brilliant. So Mel, could you probably first tell us about how does the two words choose kind influence everything you do in your life and Athlete X?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we started Choose Kind a couple of years ago. The gym's been going for 4 years. It runs through pretty much the fabric of the gym since it was started. We obviously have T-shirts and things that we sell to promote them, but it has guided the decision-making process of the gym for the last 2.5 years, really. Sort of a bit of an origin story of where it was born. Basically, I lost one of my best friends who was living over in Sydney to suicide. He was only 40 years old. He was always the sort of life of the party kind of guy. And then one morning just went to work and he committed suicide at work. And then that happened. And then literally 2 weeks later, my business partner, one of his good friends, he lived in Broome, originally from England, for about 8 years at least. Not the same thing, but he had a very good friend who committed suicide as well around that 40 years of age. So again, not an old guy, like had 2 young kids, had a lot going on for him, was a big part of the community. Choose Kind project was born from there. And since then, the project has evolved and become, it's basically ingrained in who we are as a gym and as a business, but also for kind of who I am as well. Like, I mean, you probably know me as Alex's brother, but a lot of people know me as the gym owner guy who they do that Choose Kind thing over at that gym. It's hard to pinpoint one thing that we do when it comes to that. It'd probably be more of a feeling. So people that watch us on Instagram and things like that, or when you go into our business, it just runs in the walls and it runs in the people more so. So people that join our community, we don't really have to tell them to act in a certain way because that's how we are, and it's how we want them to be, right? It's the kind of people that we want to be around. And it's done through the fact that myself, my business partner, my wife who's just opened a coffee shop, my sister who's moved in upstairs to do physio and Pilates, all of our coaches and every member, from someone that's just joined to someone that's been there over 4 years, they believe in it, right? They believe in choosing kind in 3 ways is how we put it, to themselves, to others, and to their environment. And that goes a huge way in developing awareness, probably first of all, in where they sit and how they feel, and also awareness with others and around them. So yeah, I think those sort of 3 points, choose kind to yourself, to others, and to your environment, is the sort of pillars that we use for Choose Kind. And it is built on awareness. It's always a bit of a throwaway line these days, or how you going, or how you feeling? Yeah, pretty good. That is generally the answer. But the projects and things we've studied and workshops we've been in the past, a lot of it is to do with like asking another question and checking in on each other a bit more than just how are you going, how are you really going. everybody's got stuff going on, right? Like, especially this year and last year, there's plenty going on in most people's lives. And this ethos and, I guess, framework around it helps us and even people that aren't involved in our business have a framework of checking in on each other. You know, how are they living? Are they living in a way that's positive to their environment? And that doesn't have to be like just their direct environment, but like their home, their workplace, any extracurricular things they do, right? Like, people have complex lives these days. And yeah, just getting everybody involved in those three main things and live in the way that we feel helps everybody.
Yeah, and it's definitely like I think you touched on some very interesting points, and I'll probably start towards the end and probably retrack back. But going back into asking those questions, like, you know, we all have the default answer to how you going? Yeah, not bad. Yeah, pretty good. You know, not bad, good, great. You know, even without even thinking about it. So like if you were to ask me how I was, I guarantee you I will probably say fantastic, because that is my default answer every single time at work. And, you know, and it's even before I've even thought about it. And so you speaking about, you know, asking these second questions, it's definitely really important to do that. Even if someone is got a lot going on or is struggling with certain things, they'll always go to that default answer. And for someone who's not even sort of probably taking in sort of that awareness or empathy to it, can literally go, oh yeah, sweet, yeah, good, okay, move on to the next thing. Whereas asking those second and third questions, how does that sort of, sometimes you might, you know, this person's actually probably starting to think that, oh, you know, Mel cares, or, you know, and actually wants to actually know what I am or how I am, as opposed to just asking me the general consensus of, hi.
Yeah, people generally, when you ask it, they'll give you that answer. And if you do ask it, even, it doesn't even have to be like I don't know, like, I've come from a sporting background. A lot of sporting guys, you don't want to dive straight into like, oh, tell me exactly how you're feeling. Like, that's a bit too much, right? Like, it's a bit too like in your face. But asking just that second question of like, oh yeah, cool, so everything's good. Like, what's going really well? Like, That's enough. Like, if they're like, oh, sport's going great, like it's really good, people will leave little breadcrumbs of like things that are either going well, and which is like, you should celebrate the wins.
Absolutely.
As much as you should like dig into things that they're struggling with. If you ask again, like, okay, cool, what's going really well? Like, sit in that with them for 5 minutes and be like, that sounds epic. Like, how cool is your business going? Or how cool is that thing that's happening for you going? Yeah. And that's a huge win.
Well, it is. And also you're celebrating the wins, right? By going, instead of going, oh yeah, good, and leaving it there, saying what's going really well. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And so even someone who's got a lot going on, you know, especially as business owners, we've all experienced it where we've had to shut the business down at the drop of a hat, and then had to do something about it. And, you know, lots going on. But what are the wins out of that, you know? Touching base, you know, getting back to your community again, or, you know, you've come out of the other end without closing for good, you know, and celebrating all those wins and talking to people about that, going, well, how's business? Oh, it's really busy. We've had to do all this and that and that. But what are the positive things that have come out of that? Well, this has happened. And all of a sudden you're becoming a lot more, you're finding that your life's got more meaning. It's got the value back into it again. You're celebrating the wins as opposed to just looking over them and going, oh yeah, well, that's done, I'm on to the next thing because it has to be done.
Yeah, I mean, most people's lives is very the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's the what's the saying, something about the Joneses, where like, you know, you've got to get the next car and the next house and the next this and the next that. Or your business needs this and then you need this.
Exactly. Keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Like, at one point you wanted to be probably exactly where you are right now.
Yeah.
Like, as a business owner, you probably always wanted to have a studio and this and whatever it is you've got going on. Like, but you don't often get asked, oh, like, what's been a big win? Like, oh, how good is it that you still have a business 4 years after opening, or 5 or 6 or 7? That's a huge win.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because everybody knows the stats of like 95% of small businesses close after 5 years or whatever it is.
Exactly. As soon as that rent's up, they're done.
Yeah. So even just that is a win, that we can have this conversation as two business owners. It's like, that's a win.
Absolutely. That's a win. It is a win. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
smiling.
props to you for keeping
Yeah, well,
that.
and props to you. Like I'm sitting here, I'm really smiling now. Like you can
Yeah.
hardly see my eyes in the screen. Not that anyone else can see that, but yeah, conversations like that, it does. It makes you happy, and it makes
Yeah.
you value, the effort that you've put in, the wins that you've put in.
Absolutely.
And if you look at it on the other scale, and so if we were to go down a little bit more of the negative aspect of that, if you do ask that second question, oh well, what's really going on? Like what's going on well for you? If they say, yeah, I'm good. What are the good things that have happened? It gets that person that's probably in a negative rut to either find things that have positively happened, so that might shift their mental status into a positive motion.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. But also, it might actually get that person, if they can't find anything positive, they might actually open up about what's actually been happening and change their answer.
Which is a positive. If you're going to open up on a negative situation and tell someone about things you're struggling with, that's hugely positive.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, and that's how these things roll from there, right? I don't really know what's going well, but I know all these things are going poorly for me. I've been locked down. I haven't left the house. I've been this, I've been that, I've been this, I've been that. My business is this, my business is that. It gets hard work, right?
Yeah.
And like, life's not easy in general, let alone, so to sometimes sit in it and just converse with someone what you're struggling with, that is enough. You don't have to solve their problems for them. You just have to like be there for them. And the fact that they can tell you like, hey man, I'm struggling here. It's like, okay, cool. What can I help with? This is helping me. Let's talk about it. That's helping me.
It is huge. We did a episode that's just come out last week as we're recording this on the power of conversation.
Yeah.
And how that was a healing process for a woman about her chronic pains. But the power of conversation goes so much deeper than that, and how it is a mechanism of support and a mechanism for starting almost, it can even be, as you said, you don't have to be there to solve that person's problems, but just the conversation itself, just getting it out to that person might be the start of their own self-realization on what they need to action and what they need to do themselves.
Absolutely.
Which is fantastic. And probably on a little bit of a personal note, going back to a bit further again on sort of why Choose Kind started, okay, and your friend in Sydney. Can I ask you personally, did you know what was going on?
Nah, not at all. So I'd spoken to him a couple of weeks prior. He'd moved over there maybe a year and a half. He was obviously from here and moved over there. And then that happened. And no, he was actually out the night before with a bunch of our mates. And even those guys that were there, guys and girls that were there, were like, nah, there's no sign. There was no, he wasn't down or different or anything like that. It was just like, it was very much out of the blue, and came out of absolutely nowhere, to be honest. Our entire friendship group was pretty shook up, and we didn't really know what was going on for a period of time there. So yeah, it was definitely out of the blue. But I know I hadn't had that conversation with him at all since he left a year and a half. So, I mean, whilst it's no one's fault or anything like that, like stuff like this happens. Like you do question, oh, has anyone asked him if he was all right? Had anyone checked in on him in that way? Whether they had or not is going to be a different answer for every person, but I know I hadn't. It was more of like just how you going? Yeah, cool. How's Sydney going? Oh, this, that, and the other, and that was it. So it was a big learning experience for me as well.
Checking off the questions, that standard checklist of questions. How's this? How's work?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to him in a while. Better do the thing, right? But yeah, not digging a bit further now, and looking back at it was an opportunity, huge opportunity lost. But again, you learn from these things.
Yeah, and look, I have to probably admit as well is that I've had people close to me that have fallen to suicide, and I think one of the things that a lot of people talk about is how that can be such a selfish act. But in all honesty, to sit back and probably think about that person and sort of where they were in their life and space, to have actually thought that that's their only way out. As a community, there's got to be something more that we can do. And I know that there is mental health plans, and there's doctors and there's psychologists and there's complete programs for it. However, this is talking about usually and people that are very well trained to do it, and they are a linchpin in society to be able to help us here. But then when you look about it, it doesn't take an individual to raise a child, it takes a village. What's the village doing? And that village, is the village showing that they care enough? And the village probably does care, but are they using the right tools and techniques to actually show response to that?
Yeah.
And for that person to actually, be able to sort of open up a little bit more, because it's a very, I don't know, but I'm guessing it's going to be a very lonely experience, leading into that.
One can only imagine what's going on to get to that point. And there's people around me now who are going through their own struggles and things like that. And thankfully they're having conversations with me and talking about it to me, with me. But yeah, imagine not feeling like you could talk to anybody about it. Like not one person knows about this thing, which is a massive thing in your life and how you're feeling. And again, clearly, like not every day is a great day. That's kind of how things are going to flow naturally. But yeah, I'm a big one in obviously celebrating the wins, but like quite often I'll be writing or talking about my not good days. And that's actually kind of half the battle as well, like to know that other people are struggling and that they're still pushing on and trying to do things. And I guess the common one is being vulnerable enough to talk about it or just like display it is a huge thing. Going back to the village thing, it takes a village. I think people don't realize how much they are leaders in their own village, right? Everybody is having other people look at them in some light of leadership. From the moment you're in school, even, like there's people around you that are looking at you, up to you as leaders, whether you like it or not. Like that's a hard thing to say to some people, hey, you're a leader, but we are in some avenues, in some respects. Often we don't even know we are. We don't know that there's people around us looking up to us. They're checking in on you. They're going, okay, look, he's doing this way. He's acting this way. That's the right way to act, or that's the right way to be. So yeah, I think for me, a couple of years ago when that happened, it was a huge shift in my own sort of outward communication with the world in general, let alone with the people around me.
Changing, obviously, over this 2.5-year period from when Choose Kind started, and changing sort of the way that you will approach a situation or approach a person. And it's not just tick off the standard questions, but, delve into it and help those people celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
Or if they can't find the wins to celebrate, they are opening up to be able to sort of just release and vent and talk about it. Have you found, do you have any sort of examples of people that you knew before you sort of started adopting this work and then post?
Yeah.
And sort of the changes and shifts that you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak only from my own personal point of views and stories, but
yeah, of course.
A lot of my friendship group is a little older than I am. I'm 30 years old and they're like 35 onwards. Now I have children and things like that, which is awesome for me to be around and see. And a lot of them still talk to me and they're like, who they knew me as when I was 20, when I probably got around this. I mean, we've all been 20, right? We don't need to go into what those stories are like. But at 30, I'm a completely different person to who I was at 20, which I feel like everybody, if they sat and asked themselves if they're a different person to who they are at 30 and they are at 20, would agree that that's the case, right? Things change.
Yeah.
I would suggest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can't not change because life's happened and things like that. I think the big difference for me is like I've actually made a conscious effort to change, knowing that who I was before served me very well for who I was before, but it may not serve me for who I want to become further down the line. And if we're all acknowledging that we're going to be different in 10 years, wouldn't you want to be a different that is super positive to yourself and those around you? Because you're going to be different anyway. Like you're acknowledging that that's going to happen. Cool. Like let's go. Okay, I got 10 years here or 2 years or 10 weeks even. Let's go and become whoever I want to be and whoever those people around me need me to be, because I'm going to change anyway. So we may as well go on a path that's a good one.
Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't matter where you are in life, all you've got right now is the present.
Yep.
And you've got the memories of the past. So if you want to look back at yourself, your 10 years younger self, do you want to have a positive outlook and memory of that?
Yep.
Or do you want the opposite?
Yeah. I remember I've had a few business coaches in the past and things, and one that stood out to me was he said to me, like, the things you're doing now are perfectly serving you for where you're at right now. And if you're saying that you want to change or be better, then you're going to have to adopt new things that serve you to be better in that new role or new space or new mindset. Or if you're going to become a father soon, what you do now is probably not going to serve you long term when that happens. If you're going to change jobs, same sort of thing. You're going to change anyway. You may as well change in a positive light that's going to allow you to do your new role even better.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting coaching. I am about to become a father, so
there you go. It's good timing. Yeah,
it is great timing.
And it's been cool for me. Like I personally like kids. Like I'm a massive child at heart, anyway. So, but in saying that, it's always fun hanging out with someone else's kids because you only got them for an hour or something, and then you're done. So that's always fun. Yeah, you get to give them back. But yeah, I mean, it is for me a super positive thing when life evolves and life changes. It's scary. And I'll admit that, but it's also going to happen anyway. Because we keep going back to, well, we're going to change. So we may as well frame it and become open to the fact that we're going to do it in a hugely positive light.
Onwards and upwards.
Absolutely.
We've spoken a lot about Choose Kind already and the 3 pillars that you have, and that 3-pillared approach being, kind to yourself, kind to others, and kind to your environment. And we've probably spoken a little bit definitely about kindness to others. Mm-hmm. And even that questioning that you sort of adopt, it sort of creates kindness back to yourself because you're actually vocalizing and celebrating your wins. Now, probably as a person who owns a gym, mm-hmm. Okay, and a person on the other end here that owns a Pilates studio, I tend to find that, and you probably relate to me on this, that people are quite hard on themselves. As soon as you put in a physical goal or pretty much any sort of physical goal, people start to get quite hard on themselves, whether it's, I can't do that, or, I'm not getting there quick enough, or, they're comparing themselves to,
anybody and everything.
Joe Blow, anyone else that's lifting a little bit heavier or moving a bit faster or doesn't look as out of breath or just moves a bit nicer and has a better technique and all that. And they're always constantly measuring themselves or measuring their progression with someone else's ruler. And it can be quite, and they're almost like you are always going to be your worst critic, right? When getting people sort of, and that's a form of being kind. You've got to try and, it's a form of not being kind to yourself because you're comparing, right? Yep. So to sort of try and go back and not be comparative with themselves would be a form of choosing kind to yourself, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. What's the saying? That Ego is the Enemy book by Ryan Holiday. I think he speaks about it a lot, where like comparison is the thief of joy. You're going to constantly compare yourself to others. That's only really going to have one outcome, because there's usually someone always stronger than you, always better looking than you, always whatever else you want to compare them to as. And that's probably an intrinsic thing, right? The other person you're comparing yourself to could well be looking at you going, man, look at that guy. Look at his Pilates studio. How good's he got it?
Yeah, and it is. That's a really good thing. Comparison is the killer of joy.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's, what are you comparing? Are you comparing to where you want to be, or what you perceive externally is better?
Yeah, I feel like that example of a goal setting, right? Like that's probably can be broken down a little anyway. Like for most people, they'll set a goal and it's like, well, let's just take lifting a certain weight as an example, right? I want to deadlift 100 kilos, whatever that number is. That's a great goal. Perfect. It's going to force you to do a lot of good things. I think where people sometimes fall down is like, what does it actually take to achieve that? Are you going to go to the gym 4 days a week and eat enough protein so that you're going to be not sore and be able to train really hard? And well, really, like, you're not talking about a deadlift at all there. You're not actually talking about the outcome at all. That's a cool thing to do, don't get me wrong. But what you're inherently saying to me and yourself is, I want to be more dedicated to training. I want to feel like I'm more committed to looking better, feeling better, and all those sorts of things. And that's the goal. And that metric has nothing to do with anybody else, because you're saying you want to get healthier and your goal is to be more consistent. Well, what's that got to do with you or me? That's nothing to do with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I can ask you the question is, what does that look like to you? What does being consistent mean to you? And you're not going to say, making sure I'm here when Sally's here. You're going to say, I want to come Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So at what point did that become like a outward pointing finger onto Sally? It never is. It never was. It's always this like, if I rock up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's my goal. Sweet, let's do it. If you know enough about training, you'll deadlift 100 eventually if you keep showing up.
Exactly. It's quite ironic. I had sat down and caught up with a mate of mine who I usually as a training partner before obviously COVID hit.
Yeah.
We would go to the same box together.
Yeah.
And this bloke, like, in all honesty, people that know me probably know exactly who I'm about to talk about. But this bloke is, he's 6'2". He literally is built like an athlete. He's an Adonis.
Yeah.
He has a deadlift that's in the 200s, and he moves like an athlete. And I am your typical flat-footed, blunderbuss, which I like being like that. Like, I do the best I can for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always someone that I look up to in how he trains. However, I want to train?
He's a leader, right? He might not see himself as a leader.
Yeah.
To you, he's a leader. Sorry to cut you off.
Exactly. He is. No, but he is. He's a leader.
Yeah.
And everyone stops when he's doing something in the gym. Everyone stops to watch, and like, he might not even notice it, but everyone does. And would I want to be how the amount of effort that he puts in and does with it? Absolutely not. I enjoy bettering myself for who I am and where I am. However, like, I was sitting down, caught up with him yesterday and had a beer with him, and just to see how he is and how he's going. And he'd just been back to Wollongong, where he used to live before Melbourne.
Yep.
And he'd been back to the old box that he used to train at, and the owner's son there is now 16. He's grown up as a kid in this box.
Yeah,
and
probably trained since he was 4 years old.
Exactly. And like, is literally looking at, in a couple of years is very highly likely on going to the games sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's huge. Like, this kid trains, 5 hours a day, all his meals are sponsored and all that. And, Mark's sitting there and speaking to the box owner, and he goes, this kid and Mark, like, you can see the comparisons of when Mark was sort of at that age.
Yeah.
And he turned around and said, so let me get this straight. If I just started training back when I was 16, or working up to my teenage years, 5 hours a day, I didn't go out and have a social life. I definitely didn't go out and do and drink and have a laugh and all that sort of stuff in my 20s. Yeah, exactly. Do my rites of passage in the 20s. Didn't travel overseas and didn't do that. I could be potentially where he is. And the box owner goes, yeah, you could have. And he goes, I think I'll take my life experience.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, and he was training with this kid, and this kid was outperforming him and all that. And, that's that same sort of thing going, oh man, I would love to be like that. However, is what that person's sacrificing doing for me? Or am I just wanting a better version of myself, or a more positive version of myself?
Yeah. I think it's a great sort of turn back around full circle to be like, well, he can sit back out of himself now and go, I'm happy. Like, I'm happy doing my thing and training an hour a day. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to get to. When you can inwardly look and say, no, I'm good. Like, I'm happy doing my thing here, but I'm also happy for him. I'm happy that this kid's got 5 hours a day to train and he's happy. Because ultimately what you've found in that case is they're actually both happy, and they're both doing the way they want to be in their own way, which I think is the point you're trying to get to, and that everybody there in that scenario is like, well, what you're doing is really cool. Well, what you're doing is really cool, and they're very different.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head as well. You're explaining it a lot better than I can, is having the skill to be able to decipher internally what you're really looking at and admiring.
Yeah. And I think in the conversation just gone, it's like you can zoom out as well. Like you're comparing one part of his life as opposed to this entire scope of his life that is different. Of course, it's going to be different. Sounds like one of them's 16 and one of them's over 30. Well, we acknowledge that when I was 20 and when I was 30, I was different. Well, of course, they're going to be different then. Not only is it a different time in your life, you're a different person to me. So how can I be the same as you? You know?
Yeah.
Even geographically, I live in Melbourne, you live in Wollongong. How can I compare myself to you? I can't.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's a life is full of these different circumstances of microclimates, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And micro situations.
Yeah, to compare just one little part of my life to one little part of someone else's life, I think detracts from the bigger scope of life. And it's like, no, it's not how it works. Yes, I might own a gym that's been open for 5 years, but I've also got other things going on that you don't know about, and they're like part of the story as well, which is a good part of the story. Yeah. No, it's a cool realization for your friend as well, to be like, oh, like, yeah, I could have done all that, but I'm actually kind of happy where I'm at.
Yeah, which is lovely to hear, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because you do hear it the other way as well, like, oh, I want to be like that person. Well, let's sit down and talk about what that person does to get there. Oh, no, I don't want that. I don't want to do all that.
Yeah. No, thanks.
No, I'm good. Yeah. Huge.
And there's always going to be, you know, once you sit down and actually compare apples to oranges, like is going to be, you know, how that person's living their life is the best as you said, is that point of what's serving them well for their life at that point of time. Everyone's at different stages of lives and different situations.
Absolutely. And it's like often these conversations and like people having open and honest conversations with each other, if you ask them and they're happy, then support them into that happiness. Like just help them in that even further. If they're unhappy, then they're acknowledging that things need to change a bit. And that's the hard part. Like, what do I change? What do I need to do? What do I want to adapt or adopt or add in or take out? And that's the hard part in life, is because it's often an information thing. They don't have the information they need to get better, but often it's an implementation thing. Like, oh, I know what I need to do, but I just can't do it. Well, it's because what you're doing now is serving you to this point. It's what's getting you to this result. But you're also saying you don't want these results, so let's do something different.
Do something that serves you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kindness to the environment.
Yeah.
Is it the environment, your environment, both?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great conversation in itself, right? Like, what is the environment? Is it like the natural environment? I think that can be a 45-minute topic on its own, right? Like, how do people live environmentally? Is a whole range. It's funny, like my sister, Alex, who was on the podcast previous, she lived in Melbourne for, I'm going to butcher this, I'll call it 16 years, basically, from 16 to 30 at least. She hadn't got her license till she was back in Perth for a year to study Pilates. It's just not a thing in Melbourne. Like, you could live your whole life without a car. I lost my license in August of last year. It was hell. It was like, I got to rely on other people's lifts and get Ubers, and it becomes a pretty expensive way of living, purely based on the environment I'm in. Now, is owning a car good for the environment? Probably not. But where I am, I need one. Where you are, you could probably say you don't need one. So does that mean everybody that lives in Melbourne is doing things better for their environment? You could probably argue that it is. But then you go, oh, hang on, you're living in a big city. When you go walking in Melbourne, you can see all sorts of bins and all sorts of stuff, right? So I think it's more about you just looking at yourself and saying, am I choosing kind to my environment? And it's not about this finger pointing thing. It's like, could I go to the shops and instead of buying the pre-packaged tomatoes, just go and get them and put them in my trolley? Yeah, I probably could, right? And that awareness thing is the only topic of conversation that we try to bring up when we talk about that. You ask yourself if you're living in the best way for you and your environment. If you say yes, then that's, again, like if you're happy, then it's kind of end of conversation, really. It's like, I'll just support you in being happy. But if you sit there and go, oh, I probably could, like whatever, then that's a whole new conversation. Like, let's talk about how you could make your home environment a better place for you and your happiness. Looking at a story, my wife and I used to live in a different suburb, and it had probably 7 doors that you could get out of the house from. Every night she'd check that the doors were locked, like at least twice, because the suburb wasn't the best suburb. So she'd check every single door, and it became a thing where she actually got pretty sick from it. Without knowing, the environment we were in was making her ill because she was on edge. During
stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Elongated stress with all that cortisol and all those sort of other things that happen in your body. Yeah, it does. It doesn't make you very well at all.
No, we didn't know it at the time, but I'd had a goal of mine to live by a certain beach, which is, luckily enough, we moved into this apartment in April of last year, the day before my birthday. And literally 2 weeks from moving in here, all the headaches, all the neck pain was gone. Now it still comes back when she's stressed. But it's like, oh, hang on a minute, the environment there wasn't really serving us. And it had nothing to do with like a clean house or like, it was a nice house. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, family home. There was only 2 of us living in there. But this one little thing that she had felt like she wasn't safe for a long period of time, that was not good for her. And I would argue that most people have something like that, which I would call like a toleration. Things in their environment that they're tolerating that really deep down they hate or is like hurting them or is ingrained. Like, it's just not that they talk about it and it's like, oh, well, that is not a good thing. And ultimately, like, that's something you should look to change. Now, moving house isn't an easy thing to do, but if we had kept going down the path of my wife being sick for long periods of time where she'd have to take work off, that is also not a good thing. So it was, in the end, it was a no discussion conversation. Where we're going. See you later.
Exactly. And so, definition of environment is everything that surrounds you, really, isn't it? So
absolutely. Yeah, and you can probably put in, like, again, the ecosystem that you live in, your work environment, that's an environment of yours. If you spend a lot of time doing, I don't know, playing chess in a chess club, like, that's an environment of its own. Yes, there are relationship environments involved with that, but ultimately it's actually about the space that you move in and that being as good as it can be for you to live in a good way, because that's going to make the other two good, right?
Exactly. You just finished off what I was about to say. Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
Yeah.
It's going to give back to the other two and actually really validate the other two. Absolutely.
And it's one that's probably not spoken about hugely, but if you're in a place that is not serving you, well, then you are going to struggle to serve others around you.
Sometimes you got to be selfish to be selfless.
For sure, absolutely. And really, like, it's very selfless to look after yourself, knowing that you can then care for those around you. And ultimately, that is
spot on.
That is a huge thing to say, that like, hey man, or I need a bit of time here, or I need to move because this isn't good for me. When I get back, I'm going to be all here for you. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to focus on you and we can look after each other. It's a positive outcome for everybody.
Absolutely. Hey, Mel, so do you have any quick, sort of simple, even accessible tips for our listeners to get started on being able to create kindness in their lives or choosing kind? Because I know it's a very simple concept, but like, it's, sometimes direction's all we need.
Yeah, I mean, I would say starts with the smallest possible thing that you can think of to do right now. And that can be, most people are going to head out. It's 5 o'clock where you are. I'd say some people are going to head to the shops. Like, let someone walk in the door before you. and just let them in before you, right? Like acknowledge that you're in the space with them and just like let them walk in the door before you walk in and say, have a good day. People are going to think you're a weirdo. They're like, what is this bloke up to being nice to me? Like genuinely, like hold the door for someone.
You do. You'd get a sideways look. It's just like, what do you want?
You're going to
check your wallet, check your phone, check your keys.
Yeah, for sure. Like to me, that's step one. Like, because you're going to do it, you can do it every day, and you can do it for free, and you can do it in a way that is always going to be there for yourself. And once you do that, it becomes the next thing. Because it is scary to say, okay, cool, I'm going to choose kind. What I'm going to do is try and have deeper, meaningful conversations with people around me and make sure they're all right. That's pretty far cry from what most people are doing at the moment. So how about you just open the doors for people? Let someone in the lift before you go. Like just do that. Like let it start there. Like in training terms, get to the gym. Step one, show up in a choose kind way. What is the smallest task that you can think of that involves choosing kind to either yourself, others, or your environment? And just do that as often as you can. And you will inherently then try and do more things from kindness because you're going to be doing it all the time. Fit and healthy people train a lot, right? Happy people, choose kind people, they do it a lot. It was cool to see one of my PTs, his dad came in. There's a little coffee shop in the front of the gym. He bought the entire class at the start, their coffee. It was 7 coffees. And then left, didn't say anything, just did the thing, like bought them and left. That's $30 or $40 or whatever, bought 7 coffees. Every person was like, oh, fuck, how good is this? Look at this. Like, what a legend.
That just made 7 people's day.
Literally, it was at 6:45 in the morning. There's 7 people there that are going to leave that environment and go, how good was that? Like, that bloke, like, what a legend. Not only that, he's thinking in that way as well. He's thinking, yep, cool, I'm going to do that. That's positive, hugely positive. Most of us can drop $5 on the person's coffee in front of us or behind us. I would hazard to guess that if they're listening to this, they could.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is like there's actually some research out there, and I'll try and dig it up to put in the show notes. But there was a research paper that was done on people who volunteer their time for sort of, in volunteer salvos and all those sorts of charity organisations. And the retirees that were actually volunteering their time and giving back to the communities and giving back to people, they did the study through their twilight years, and they actually, on a larger scale, outlived the people that weren't in the control group. And actually, because they were actually living a happier and more fruitful life, that it was actually sort of, creating more, better health benefits and everything else, so having less problems with their own health. So even though you're giving to someone else, or you're giving to others, or you're giving to a community, you're inherently making yourself feel better, and you're inherently making yourself more healthy through all the reactions that happens as a knock-on to that.
Do something nice for someone and tell me that you don't feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody knows it's good for them, and it's just hard to do because, like you spoke about, in that takes a tribe to raise a child. That's how we all used to live, right? We also live in a group of 200 people, and I'm pretty sure you weren't going to be a wanker to all those 200 people because you're going to live with them for a long time. So it pays to be nice. It pays to choose kind and say, cool, I'm going to be nice to you because you're actually the person in charge of feeding me. Now, we don't live like that anymore. That doesn't mean we can't live as if that was a thing. Like, you might not think the guy you see at Woolies every night when you go past is a part of your life, but he is, because you see him there every single Wednesday night, and you both look at each other like, yeah, I'll see you again. You did that little glance like, oh, it's 7:00. You're here for Woolies too. Me too. Like, even just nodding to that person is like, that is enough of a thing sometimes to be like, I acknowledge you. I saw you last week. How are you? Don't have to say that, but you just be like, I acknowledge you. And that can be the easiest thing to do for some people. Just be like, yep, I see you. I saw you last week. I'll see you again next week.
Yeah, it's that easy. It's incredible, isn't it?
When you start with something small, and then it snowballs from there. And everyone's going to be different because everybody is different. We spent 40 minutes talking about that. But start with something you can do. It's not my place to tell you how to do this. But I think if you sat down and said, what's the smallest thing I could do? Let's do that. Let's start there.
Okay, it's like setting tangible goals.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You start small.
Start with something that's achievable, measurable. Cool. I held a door for one person today. Huge.
This has been such an amazing conversation. I'm going to have probably sore cheeks from smiling so much.
Good time.
So I'm going to have to say to you, thank you, because you've actually made my Friday afternoon by having a chat like this as well. It's been incredible.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for reaching out. I know it takes courage to ask these questions. Can you spare some time? So props to you for doing what you're doing. It's super cool to see.
Thank you. And once again, props to you as well, because what you're doing over there in Bibra Lakes and Perth and WA is fantastic. And it's fantastic for not just the Athlete X community and everyone that sort of touches base in those four walls and the businesses that are inside there too, the different ones, but also as a greater community, because it echoes. So thank you very much for what you're doing too. It's amazing, and props to you.
Pleasure. It's been good ride. So let's just keep rolling.
Absolutely. So I've got some more questions for you, and these are the questions that everyone gets in their guest episode, and it's the rapid fire questions, and it's a few questions that I ask everyone just to sort of know more about Mel and what Mel's like. Okay?
Yeah, let's hit it.
What's your morning ritual?
My morning ritual is all based around, I have a sunlight alarm. So I have one of those alarms where it slowly turns the light on as if it was like the sun rising, and it birds chirping. I hit snooze once, my wife gets up and showers, and then I get up and shower. Then we go to work. We both start work at 6 o'clock every morning, so we usually leave before 5:30, and we start every morning busy. I don't have any crazy like cold shower, brush my eyeballs with whatever. That's it. We both get up and shower and we go to work, and we both love what we do. So, I mean, I know of all the things that we should do, but it becomes hard to get up at 5 o'clock every morning, truth be told. So I'm going to be 100% honest. And that's what happens.
But what works for you, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the alarm thing has been a big changer for us, not waking up to the Apple alarm. It's like someone screaming at you has been huge for us.
Well, I'll let you on a secret. My alarm it's not a sunrise alarm, but I purposely changed because I couldn't wake up to an alarm like that either, because it just sort of created all these sort of negative thoughts.
Yep.
But my alarm is now an audience applauding.
Yeah.
Like it's actually celebrating that I'm getting up in the morning.
Perfect,
So,
right? Yeah.
Mm.
That works.
Yeah, whatever works for you,
Absolutely.
right? Exactly. Yeah. What's your favourite health habit?
The beach. So, yeah, I live at the beach. When I'm flat or feeling overwhelmed, I usually just head straight down there and take a walk. Try to take nothing with me and get in the water. And for me, that's my happy place. If my wife's there with me, it's even better. We just talk about life and how we're going to solve the world's problems, I guess. We usually come up with some amazing ideas when we're walking together, because it definitely feels like we're like in this thing together, because we're literally walking side by side down on the beach. So for me, that if I get that done during the day, it's a good day no matter what else happens.
Most valuable lesson learnt to date?
Confirming that either way things are going to change, so you may as well be in charge of how that's going to happen.
Gets back to everything we spoke about.
Yeah, I mean, we can all agree it's going to happen, so let's just take ownership of it and become who we think we can be.
What workplace or productivity tool could you not live without?
Shared Google Calendars. Yeah, so there's four of us that work in the gym, and my wife and Alex. Knowing where each other's going to be and when we can book each other in and all like coexist in a space has been the biggest help. Just being like awareness of each other's space as well. Cool. Like my business partner picks his nearly 1-year-old up from daycare that afternoon. Don't be booking anything in then, because that's his time with his family. And I think respecting boundaries is what it's created for everybody to say, like, this is work time. this is not work time. So just respect both of those.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. More places should probably do that, I think.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's a productivity tool that we probably all need to think about.
For sure.
Which, funny enough, I think Alex's productivity tool was don't ask me what I'm doing without my calendar. So there you go. It all sort of sits in there.
Yeah.
I always like to hear this one. What is your life motto?
Choose kind.
Knew it. It's a great
Nice
one.
and simple.
Such a good motto. So, Mel, I've got one last question for you. And it's like getting back to the good old elevator pitches, right? So if you were stuck in an elevator for 20 seconds with someone and you wanted to pitch what we spoke about today, what would you say?
I'd ask them how they're going, and I'd say, what's going well, what's going not so well. And then that'd be, my 20 seconds would be used to create more time with them. Yeah, I'd spend 20 seconds asking how they were. And that is actually how I spend my time in my lift. If I get in the lift with someone in my flat, I will ask them how their day was.
That's amazing. Beautiful. Well, Mel, I'm a bit speechless on what I can say about today's chat. It's been a fantastic chat, and it's been such a valuable chat as well. And I think it's an imperative and great message to be getting out to everyone, as such. If anyone's sort of in the Bibra Lakes area or obviously in the Perth area as well, I highly say go out and check out Mel down at Athlete X and anything else. Is there any way we can sort of get in contact with you or find you, Mel?
Yeah, the website's just athletex.com.au, and on Instagram we're the.athletex. We're doing a run of the Choose Kind shirts, and all of the money raised when we sell these goes to a Melbourne-based company called the Tomorrow Man Project.
And they are a fantastic project. Absolute fantastic project. Yeah.
Yeah. So we donate every year. We donate money to them because we believe in that. We have a few shirts left of the third run. We did a white shirt, a black shirt, and then a grey shirt. If you're interested in rocking one of these shirts, and surprisingly enough, I mean, it's a T-shirt, right? It is what it is. On the back, it says there's kindness in all of us. If you go to the website, you'll see it. You'd be surprised how much you get out of wearing a shirt like this when someone's walking at you and this is the first thing that hits them, especially if you have a mask on. They can't see your face, but they can see this straight away. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you get it. These 2 words and you get it straight away. So, yeah, I mean, if they wanted to support us, just buy a shirt and roll it and do the things that they feel that they can. And, yeah, that'd be it, really.
I have to say my shirt's on its way.
Good to hear.
Yeah, on the next batch.
Good to hear.
So yeah, brilliant. And we'll make sure all those links and everything else, and the links to the website, especially for those Choose Kind shirts and everything else, are in the show notes. We'll make sure they're all in there as well. Yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Mel. Guys, if you've liked what you've heard today, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and go out and. I usually say go out and tell 3 friends that you feel like that needs to listen to this episode, but I'd say go out and tell everyone about this episode. This is definitely a message that needs to go out and is very valid to everyone in a nutshell. And also, don't forget to give yourself permission to go take a selfie. And I'd actually say make sure you go and choose kind. Thanks, guys.